Officially, it's known as the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons that may have indiscriminate effects or are deemed to be excessively injurious, but everybody knows it as the CCW, the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons.
Cela ne semble pas être le cas, et je m'en félicite. Le rapport est adopté. The last meeting of state parties of the CCW decided to launch or to organize a meeting next May. It will be some sort of a working group, a working body of the CCW open to all member states and even to observer states to have an in-depth debate on lethal autonomous weapon system. It is an emerging issue. There has been a very interesting and in-depth debates within the framework of the civil society, of NGOs, of think tanks, of the academia. But there has been no debate, well actually no real important debate in a really open and universal international organization. So it will be the first time that we will have this debate, and this is the reason why it will be very important.
Ambassador Jean-Yves Simon-Michel, the French ambassador to the Conference on Disarmament and the French disarmament ambassador in Geneva, he will be chairing the May meeting, and he will then report to the November CCW meeting of states parties. And he will do this under his own authority as chairman. It's very much a given that his report will carry great weight. When we come to the efforts to possibly ban lethal autonomous weapons, there is sometimes an analogy that is made to the CCW Protocol 4 on blinding lasers, because Protocol 4 on blinding lasers actually bans this whole category of a weapon type.
As we talk to foreign countries, on the one hand, I can see that many interlocutors are very careful, precisely, I guess, because they have no real national position on that. And because in the field of disarmament, of course, the delegations are always very careful. But on the other hand, I've never listened to anybody saying that, well, this is an issue that we should not touch. We are willing to support the development of a weapon system with man out of the loop. Nobody says that.
As far as the UN and UNODA is concerned, all I can say is that we very much hope that there be new success stories in the area of disarmament.
I think that civil society has a very important role to raise awareness, to provide some incentive within the debate, and maybe also to help countries to be better informed. It helps create a momentum, and it certainly helps us to have a better vision of what our future could be if we do not do anything.
The role of civil society as a key partner to the United Nations is absolutely essential. The United Nations is, especially when it comes to the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, we are a shoestring operation. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has said that the world is overarmed and peace is underfunded. And for the United Nations to be able to project its principles and ideals broadly, we need partnerships with civil society. When it comes to this process, I really see the role of the campaign to ban killer robots as being analogous to the civil society-driven success stories to ban landmines and cluster munitions. So we hope to work closely together with civil society actors on this issue as well.
Well, we're helping to organise this strategy workshop for campaigners to come together and really provide a space to think about what we're going to be doing as part of the campaign this year. In particular, we're discussing our plans around the UN Convention on Conventional Weapons meeting, which will be in May. There'll be another meeting in November. And so we, as a campaign, have been very excited that governments are really taking this issue up, putting it on their agenda, but we need to make sure that we are organised and coordinated in what we want to do, make sure that governments are working towards a ban on killer robots.
Well, I'm here today because it's the second International Civil Society Conference on killer robots. And I'm working for PAX, formerly known as IKT Pax Christi, one of the co-founders of the Stop Killer Robots campaign. I hope to achieve that more and more campaigners who are here, some for the first time, start to get active on the issue. Because the time is now, actually. It's amazing that you see, when we were here last year, it was a new issue. And within a year, we got it on several agendas. But we still need the activists to knock on doors and to make sure that in capitals, people know that this is an issue. Because we can't say it goes against the public conscience if we don't involve the public as well. So I hope campaigners come back here with more knowledge, more energy, more tools, and start campaigning back home.
I'm here because we're part of the campaign to stop killer robots. We've just started our national campaign work in Stockholm, and we're very excited about that. I think people came today because this is still a comparatively new issue, but it's we've seen some very fast positive development around it. It's already up on the agenda at the UN. And so this is really the time where we need to come together and talk strategy. How do we move forward from here in national context, in the international fora?
In theory, any state party could block a mandate.
Article 36 is pulling together UK-based organisations to look at how we're going to be campaigning at this issue nationally. The UK government have been saying that they don't think any new laws are needed to deal with the issue of fully autonomous weapons, but we think they need to really look at this issue more seriously and form a comprehensive policy, and that new laws are needed. A new international treaty to prohibit fully autonomous weapons is what we need to work towards. So we've got a lot of work to do here in the UK, but we've got good campaigning organisations that we're working together with to achieve that.
Well, Amnesty is a human rights movement, and we think that fully automated robotic weapons won't comply with international human rights law, because that law requires states to only use lethal force when there's an imminent threat to life or serious injury, and that means a direct and immediate threat in a particular situation. And when we talk with the technologists and the government officials, none of them can convince us that a machine can actually do that. Besides which, we think it's morally and ethically wrong for a machine to be making decisions about human life and death.
What they've agreed to do in the CCW, the Convention on Conventional Weapons, is to come together for 4 days of talks in May. This will be the first time that governments have come together for structured discussion of this. Being led by a French ambassador, you'll have up to possibly more than 100 countries represented, and they'll be looking at the various aspects of this. The technical aspects, the operational aspects, the legal aspects, and the moral and ethical aspects. We managed to get that on the agenda as well, which we thought was crucial. So they'll be looking at all the various components of this and discussing different ways to address it. And this should lead to a decision by the end of the year about whether or not to continue work. And we're confident that the decision will be made to continue to do this work in the CCW. We think it will lead to negotiations, and that those negotiations will end with the conclusion of a prohibition on fully autonomous weapons or killer robots. There seems to be such a sense of public revulsion of this weapon that I think the politicians and the militaries and others are paying attention, and they're all recognizing that something needs to be done. So they're willing to initiate discussions at a very early stage. Sometimes it takes years just to convince governments to sit down and talk to each other about a military-oriented issue. Here, in less than a year, they've agreed to come together and hold structured talks in one of the most conservative forums that exists on weapons issues, the Convention on Conventional Weapons, one controlled by the US and Russia and China, and yet they all feel compelled to begin the discussions on this to try to find the way forward. It won't be easy to convince them that the way forward is a preemptive ban on the weapon, like we did with blinding lasers, but they're ready to start talking about how humanitarian law applies to these issues, about whether restrictions are needed, and even about whether a ban is justified. And we think we'll convince them in the end.